I'm Sarah. Welcome back to my channel where I talk about my journey to sustainable health and meaningful success. If you're coming back and you've already subscribed, welcome back. Y'all are my people and I love you so much. And if you've just recently subscribed, welcome to the squad. We're glad to have you. And if you're new, I hope you consider subscribing by the end of this video. I have covered in an entire playlist my experience in Amway Leadership Team Development, LTD for short. My multi-level marketing experience and how it was definitely a cult. And now we are kind of shifting into this new season where we're trying to find ways to rebuild our lives after leaving a multi-level marketing company or a cult. And you guys were so gracious in my last video when I did my last anti-MLM type video. I might still tag my videos as anti-MLM, but I am really trying to move forward in my content and hopefully provide you guys with more resources as to how to really move on and accomplish your dreams and do all of the entrepreneurial things that you wanted to do in multi-level marketing, and how we can find alternatives to that. There's a lot of anti-MLM creators who already do this, like Savvy Writes Books and Savannah Marie. Those are two content creators on the top of my head that are so good at supporting small businesses and looking into more entrepreneurial ways to accomplish your dreams without scamming people. And from my perspective, because I've been losing on my journey to lose 200 pounds and also recovering from leaving a legit cult in Amway, I've just been using my channel as finding a realistic approach to recovery and growth. So today I would like to respond. This is actually going to be a 2-part video because one of you sweet souls messaged me a very serious question because you're currently in Amway Leadership Team Development, and there's a lot of fears and concerns that are coming up for you whenever you think that you're going, or you might actually consider leaving. And I am so grateful to this person for allowing me to read this question aloud on my channel. We are going to keep this person anonymous, and we're going to really address their concerns. So, yeah, I have a lot of notes and we're going to really get into it. So let's just start by reading this person's message. They say, "Your latest video was so good. I would personally love to hear you keep talking about ways for people to still pursue their passions and to build new friendships, live their lives, and not feel guilty for being double-minded, etc. I can't tell you the heartbreak that it gives me when I hear that someone else contacted a friend of mine who was interested, and that person goes from being my friend to being my crossline. Or when I talk about going back to school or starting a real business and someone upline says, 'What do you really want?' And I'm thinking, this, but I can't have that or can't have what I really want, apparently. It's exhausting. I'm feeling like if I quit, I'll lose a ton of people who I think care about me. But if I stay due to my oversaturation, my friends will show up on the team and they won't be allowed to be my friends anymore. I'd love to hear your thoughts about rebuilding after leaving the team. Also, I truly believed for a long time that if I was building my business with integrity and good, pure interests at heart, it didn't matter how much negative stuff was out there about Amway and LTD as organizations, that if I was doing things well, it would still be okay. I'm honestly starting to wonder if even my integrity and personal character and good intentions don't matter and won't actually make a difference because Amway as a company is so flawed. That, and I feel like I've been so brainwashed to think that my dreams won't and can't happen without Amway that I'm scared my life will fall apart if I quit or switch to being my sponsor's customer. It's messed that deeply with my mind And I've filtered just about every person I know. Sigh, maybe I should just write out my stories for you in an email, LOL. So thank you so much for writing all of this. It's a lot. And as I was like reading through this and marking it up and doing my whole note-taking analysis process, it really hit me how much anxiety, if you know that what you're in is a high control situation and a high manipulation kind of situation, it really hit me that you stand to lose a lot, and the unknowns on the other side of the group is very daunting. I know I've made videos before talking about, oh, you're thinking about leaving your MLM. Here are questions that you should ask yourself and weigh the pros and cons. It's more from an analytical perspective. But as I'm reading this message, I can't help but think back to my research that I've done in like the Amish community, where if you leave the Amish religion, you're shunned and you are completely cast out of that environment. And that happens with a lot of cults and people who are raised in very, very religious environments. If it's that controlling, then you stand to lose a lot if you have a dissenting opinion. And I just really want to take time to honor this person's struggle. And if you've been in this position before, I really hope the squad comes through and leaves their advice and encouragement in the comments, because when I left Amway, I didn't know that I was going to be leaving Amway. When I had that conversation with my upline, I thought I was just going to take a break, and then it just turned into a permanent break off. And I did not realize that by saying that I needed to take a break, that I was dismissing, I wasn't dismissing, but I was in effect leaving the group, and that the group would shun me once I left. I didn't realize that in that one conversation, I would lose my entire social support outside of my immediate family. And so when I made that phone call and the conversation happened as it did, I didn't have the anxiety leading up to it that was like, I may or may not have friends by the end of this conversation. And so my heart breaks. My heart breaks for this person. So I want to break up my response in 2 separate videos, and this video is going to talk about the main concern that I perceive from this message, and that is the loss of community. And then the second part, we're going to talk about the loss of opportunity or the loss of dreams, whether or not you can really make it outside of the Amway business, if you can really become successful and accomplish your dreams without a multi-level marketing opportunity. So this conversation in particular is heavy. So I listed basically the main points of this conversation in the margin next to it, that this person is searching for a new direction. And it actually lines up with what I want to start pursuing this summer in my video content, that we can pursue our passions, we can build new friendships, we can have guilt-free work-life balance, and we can rebuild our life after leaving a toxic relationship or a cult or just a high control environment. This person listed several fears and concerns. And so from my highlighting of everything that they mentioned that they were afraid that if they stayed, that they would lose friends as soon as they became crossline, because, clearly their upline or their crossline are, recruiting from the same social pool. And so from that same social, they all have the same contact lists. And so as soon as someone from their friend group is recruited into the business, then they become cross-line. And there's very strict protocol for what is appropriate cross-lining. You really don't hang out with your cross-line outside of business functions, and you don't talk about personal or deeply, even just anything perceived as negative, you don't talk about with cross-line, because you're only supposed to talk about that with your upline. So if, this person is in the business and then their friend is recruited by, someone else that was in their social group, then that person becomes cross-line, and you're no longer allowed to confide in them as a friend, and you're no longer allowed to hang out with them outside of the business because they're cross-lining, and that's inappropriate cross-lining. So they're already losing friends in the business. So it's already putting strain on their social life. The next concern that they listed was, going back to school or starting a real business, as they phrased it, a real business, despite upline counsel. That's something that has been, a tough thing to make a decision about. They feel manipulated to not go and pursue other opportunities outside of the business. That they might lose all of the friends in the business or people who, they really think care about them if they were to leave Amway Ltd and they were to pursue something else, that they might completely lose those friendships and not allowed to be friends with those people anymore. They were concerned that their own good intentions, as they said, don't outweigh the damage that Amway and Ltd do to the people within the company. They were concerned that their dreams won't or can't come true without Amway. Their life will fall apart if they quit. And lastly, that they have filtered out their entire network. They've already tried to recruit everybody in their friend group. So from my personal experience, I know that meant that I lost a lot of people's trust, because I'm contacting them and I'm hitting them up to catch up, but then I hit them with a recruitment tactic and I want you to join my pyramid scheme, and then all of a sudden, people who used to be your friend don't want to be your friend anymore because they think you're just shilling a product or trying to recruit them into a shady cult. I can't imagine the anxiety of the situation that you're in. Because, put very simply, regardless of whether or not you stay in Amway Ltd or if you leave, it looks like you're facing a period of time where you don't have too many friends to turn to. It sounds like if you stay in Amway Ltd, that your upline is gonna still support you, but based off of the fear that you've conveyed in this message, that you don't know whether or not they will talk to you after you leave, that love for you, so far as is very conditional. It's conditional on you going to the meetings, purchasing products, buying tickets, buying subscriptions, or just attending. It's conditional on you believing that Amway is a great business. It's conditional on you agreeing and aligning yourself with the way that they choose to live their lives. It could very well be unconditional, but you don't know that, and that's the fear. That the people that who you think care about you could potentially turn their backs on you as soon as you stop, feeding into this very monetary incentive to be your friend, if that makes sense. If you stay in the business, I can see that can just get more and more isolating, especially if you just get more and more crossline that you're not actually allowed to be genuine, real friends with. If you're not allowed to hang out outside of the business, if you're not allowed to talk with people in a very real manner and discuss the current things that you're struggling with, then the people that you have as friends are more just acquaintances. They're people that you can have a very shallow, surface level conversation every week, but you really can't do life with those people, even though they say you're going to do life with them, and you get into really intimate settings where you get into more and more, qualifier night owls. That's all conditional on whether or not you make enough money in the business. You have to earn enough money in the business in order to qualify to have genuine relationships and have real conversations with people. And that is not a normal, healthy, functioning community. That is a cult. And regardless of whether or not I say that you're in a cult and whether or not you actually acknowledge that you're in a cult, because it seems like from what you've said in your message, you know that Amway and LTD does so much damage to people in the way that they alienate people from the outside world, and it create an us versus them group. And then as soon as someone leaves, they're excommunicated. So you kind of, it's indicated by your message that you already know that you are in a toxic environment, but that doesn't make it any easier to potentially leave. Because, like you said in your message, if you leave, you stand to lose a lot of people, especially if they're anything like my group, which, LTD is very systemic or systematic. They're very duplicatable in the way that they do things. So if it happens to me, if it happens to a lot of other people who comment down below, it very well could happen to you. That, people who tell you that they love you and care about you and will always want the best for you, as soon as you stop going to meetings, then suddenly they can't even have a conversation with you, or they can't hang out with you. And then on top of that, regardless of whether or not you stay or whether you leave, like you said, you've filtered all of your existing network. So there's a potential that the people that you have tried to, contact in this business and will not trust you once you leave. I have personal experience with that. There's a lot of people in my life who I've started to hang out with more and started to rebuild connections, but when I initially left, not one person outside of my immediate family actually trusted me. As I was thinking about my response to this particular portion of your message, I couldn't help but start to think about yes, other people who have left cults, but also people who are afraid to be themselves around people they think love them, and afraid to own their own identities, or afraid to actually come forward with their identities as how they live their lives. I'm skirting around it, but I don't want to draw the exact comparison and say that it's exactly like this, because it certainly isn't. But the only way that I could really wrap my mind around this is someone who's coming out about their sexuality or about their gender identity. Especially if they grew up in a really fundamentalist Christian environment, or a really strict environment, and they know that the people who surround them, like, love them, but they don't know if they will love them if they knew the full truth about them. And people in that environment might reject them and think that they're doing good and think that they're rejecting them for good and righteous reasons, but in reality they're just doing more damage, and they are hurting that person to the core. So that's the only way that I can see it, is like, when you're thinking about leaving a high control environment where you really deeply care about the people, even if you really deeply care about the people who are manipulating and controlling you, because that's definitely part of being someone who's been manipulated and controlled and abused, is a lot of victims actually have an emotional attachment and want to defend the people who have victimized them. And I apologize if my thoughts are all over the place, because honestly, what do you say? Like, to someone who's thinking about coming out and not knowing whether or not their family will reject them, or not knowing whether or not, they're going to have a social support, and they're going to have a cushion if they fall. You can't just say you should just leave. You got to get out of there. It doesn't matter, because, or you just got to own it. And if they love you, then great. And if they don't, then screw them. Well, it's not that simple. It's not that simple. Because these are real human relationships and real human emotions. So to someone who is thinking about leaving their high control environment, but also realizing that they could potentially lose the ground from underneath them, it's a huge jump. And I totally get that. Number one, with the people that you have already tried to recruit in Amway, if you've already filtered through your network and you may have felt like you've isolated yourself from all of your connections because they all think you're the crazy MLM person, an apology goes a long way. That was the second video that I ever released on YouTube, was an apology toward anybody that I hurt or made them feel like they were just a dollar figure to me. So an apology goes a long way, and there is definite hope for rebuilding a lot of relationships that may have been made awkward by your recruitment tactics. But if they are really the realist, they will, people have compassion for people who've been manipulated and taken advantage of when they were vulnerable. So there's a lot of hope to rebuild that network. In terms of whether or not, like, I think, I mean, ultimately, I'm going to say you do have to get out at some point. You can't just keep living your life in fear, especially being manipulated and controlled by fear from people who might just want your money. So in terms of leaving, I understand that it's a huge trust exercise. It's like the trust fall exercise where you hope that the person's going to catch you if you fall back. But in this case, likelihood is that no one's going to catch you. And you might fall. So what I can suggest is that you judo fall. I know that sounds dumb, but I used to do judo as a kid, and judo is not quite a martial art. It is a sport where instead of kicking and punching and, like karate type moves or taekwondo, judo is more like throwing and pinning to the mat and there's some chokes and whatever. But with judo, you're flying around a lot more, and you're supposed to use particular techniques to throw people. So in judo, as that being part of the sport, you learned how to fall correctly so that you don't get hurt. You don't fall on your head, and you fall with proper form. And if you fall with proper form, you actually don't feel the impact of your fall. You know, you slap the mat really hard with your arm so that it absorbs the impact. You tuck your chin so you don't fall on your head. There's a proper way to fall. So with this kind of trust exercise, if you're gonna leave and you're gonna just fall back and hope that someone catches you, hope that if you leave that they will still stick around and be a part of your life and that you won't be shunned by the group. You know, fall back, see if you can test your trust in that social circle, but know that the higher likelihood is that you will fall. So tuck your chin and brace yourself and absorb the impact. That's a weird analogy, but it's what you're currently describing in this message is a lot of angst. There's so much anxiety and so much fear and lack of trust in the friendships and community that you have, because you don't know whether or not they would still love you if you were not in this business, if you were not in this group. So really the only way to test that and to see if your community is trustworthy is to trust fall, but brace yourself. It's why I've dedicated a lot of my videos to this, because I really wanted to show that people can recover after falling hard. I did not brace myself. I did not fall correctly. Instead, I fell as soon as that conversation was over. The next day, I got into a really toxic relationship. Within the month, I was pregnant. Within, the next couple months, I miscarried and was grieving and compounding my grief on top of losing my entire community. I didn't fall correctly. I didn't brace myself. In judo, we fall on mats. We cushion our fall. So we're not throwing each other on concrete. We're throwing each other, and when you're practicing especially, you have really thick, cushy mats, so that you really don't hurt yourself. Build more of a cushioning for you, more of a support, and be really intentional about the support that you do hang out with. If you have immediate family who is not in the business and are really positive influences on you, then lean into those relationships. If you have the ability to go to therapy, lean into that and go to therapy. Even if you don't think you need therapy, sometimes it gets talking it out to potentially uncover some stuff. And it might not actually be correcting your thought process. For me, my therapist was able to confirm that my thoughts were actually correct, that I wasn't crazy, because in my environment, I had been so gaslighted and so manipulated that for years, I thought I was the problem. And it took therapy to help me see that I was in a very high control and manipulative and abusive situation. So therapy actually just helped me see myself for who I really was, which was really worthwhile. I mean, I'm a really worthwhile individual, and I'm not any of the things that my upline sought to label me as. I'm not a loser, I'm not a quitter, and I'm not lazy, and I'm not an excuse maker, and all of those things. But, sometimes it takes someone else to help hold a mirror up to you so you can see your own reflection clearly. If you're the type of person to use religion as a source of comfort, or God and your relationship with God as a rock that you can firmly plant yourself on, then by all means, leaving this kind of environment and kind of stripping away a lot of relationships all at once and kind of leaving yourself socially stranded. If you're spiritually grounded, that helps a lot. I can't speak from personal experience because when I left, my entire faith was uprooted because I just lost everything when I left. So if you're able to surround yourself with people who are more spiritually minded, or just have your own private faith with God and lean into that. Lastly, I would say that you shouldn't be afraid to be alone. And I know that that's a very broad statement, and for me, with my history, I've experienced enough fear of just my own thoughts and my own anxieties. So I can't just blanketly say everyone should be comfortable with just being by themselves for a while. No, it's much easier said than done. But a season of being on your own and finding yourself is not is not detrimental if you can handle it. I don't really know how to say that properly, but I'm just saying that for me, before, I was really afraid to be by myself and to not have any friends and to even just be in a room with my own thoughts. I was very depressed and had a lot of very self-harming thoughts. In that case, I would not suggest forcing yourself through that kind of torment. And in that case specifically, mental health professionals, you should definitely be in close contact with a care team. So, but if you are able to embrace a time of solitude and you're able to learn yourself again, learn your own likes and dislikes, learn your own ambitions, and start exploring your own view of the world without the influence of an organization that seeks to make a profit off of you, then embrace that time and learn to love yourself. That's such a broad thing. I mean, I could make so many videos just on that one statement alone, but basically what I'm saying is that worst case scenario, if you end up by yourself, sometimes you will find that you are your own best company. And from there, you can start finding like-minded people and start rebuilding again. And I think I'm going to launch into a lot more videos talking about that. But in terms of this one side of this message with the fear of losing your entire community, you have to take it at your own timing, and eventually you will have to test the trust of the people that you have as part of your community. And if you're going to do a trust fall, brace yourself and fall correctly so that you try, to minimize the damage. And worst case scenario, if you end up by yourself, you'll find that that you are a very pleasurable person to be around, even if it is in solitude. Next week, I will address the portion about going back to school, starting a real business, whether or not we can really pursue our dreams outside of multi-level marketing, and what is the possibility of accomplishing our dreams once we have decided that multi-level marketing might not be the route that we want to take. I, again, thank you so much for sending in this message. If you do have other questions and concerns, please message me on Instagram, because I could potentially make a video in response to it. Or if anything, we could just chat on Instagram. And if you have similar experiences, please leave them in the comments below. If you have advice or encouragement, this is definitely the video to do that. I would really love to hear your thoughts, squad. Come through. And I love you guys so much. Talk to you guys on Sunday about more Whole30 stuff, and on Wednesday about part 2 of the response to this message. Okay, bye.